have a rule on this channel. Show us the documents. We have shown you the document codes for the Gateway process. We've shown you the Stargate protocols. We've shown you the Yeti regulations. But you keep asking for one specific story, Admiral Byrd, Antarctica, the Hollow Earth. I went to the CIA archives to find the file, and I found nothing. Now, usually that means it's a fake story, but in this case, the silence is actually the loudest part of the mystery. Operation Highjump took place in early 1947. The CIA was founded in September 1947. This event didn't produce a CIA file because this event predates the agency. In fact, many historians and conspiracy theorists argue that the disaster that happened on the ice in 1947 was the reason the U.S. decided it needed a central intelligence agency in the first place. Today, we are looking at a prequel, if you will. We're looking at an interview in a newspaper in Chile. We're looking at the Navy damage reports, and we are looking at the pull-to-pull warning of Admiral Byrd. Did the U.S. Navy fight a secret war at the bottom of the world? And did they lose? Let's set the scene. It's August 1946. World War II has been over for exactly 1 year. The United States is tired. The soldiers are home. The budgets are slashed. And yet the U.S. Navy decides to assemble Task Force 68. This wasn't a scientific survey. This was an invasion fleet. 4,700 combat troops. The aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, 2 destroyers, a submarine, the USS Senate, multiple tankers and supply ships. The commander was Admiral Richard E. Byrd. He was the American Neil Armstrong of his day as far as the snow goes. He had flown over both poles. He was the first to ever do that, and he was a national hero. The official mission statement, quote, "to train personnel and test equipment in frigid zones," end quote. You don't send an aircraft carrier to test a parka. You send an aircraft carrier to project power. Rumors were swirling in 1946. U.S. intelligence, the OSS, the precursor to the CIA, knew that the Nazis had been obsessed with Antarctica. They had mapped a region that they had named as a village in a safe zone. There were fears that high-ranking officials in advanced technology had been smuggled out of Germany via U-boats to a secret base on the ice in Antarctica. So Byrd went down there, not with clipboards, but with depth charges. The mission was scheduled to last 6 to 8 months, and it lasted only 8 weeks. They turned around and ran away. Why? The official story is bad weather, and to be fair, the weather in Antarctica is lethal, but the specific incidents that occurred suggest they were dealing with something more than the wind. On December 30th, 1946, a massive Martin Mariner seaplane, codenamed George I, took off on a patrol mission. It was carrying cameras, magnetometers to detect metal under the ice, and a full crew. According to the official U.S. Navy Aviation Accident Report, which you can find in the Naval History and Heritage Command, different from the CIA, the plane encountered a sudden phenomenon. It wasn't just fog. Pilots reported ice blink, where the horizons disappear, but also radar anomalies. This is when the snow is so bad and you're in a plane that you can't tell up from down. George I slammed into a ridge. 3 men died, Maxwell Lopez, Frederick Williams, and Wendell Henderson. The survivors were stranded on the ice for 13 days. When they were rescued, they were terrified, not just of the cold, but of what they had seen. Unofficial reports, log entries from lower deck sailors that have leaked over the decades, speak of lights that moved underwater and flew into the air. They speak of craft that didn't have wings but could outrun the Navy fighters. By late February 1947, Admiral Byrd had seen enough. He ended up ordering a full and complete retreat of everyone down there. If you Google this topic, you'll find stories about Admiral Byrd's secret diary. The story goes that Byrd flew into a hole in the pole and met a race of tall blonde girls inside the Earth's crust, the inner lithosphere. If you've ever seen The Land of the Lost, that's what that film is based on, that book. Look at this. In geology, the lithosphere is a solid rock. The hollow earth theory suggests there is a void space inside. While this makes for a great story, there is no evidence Byrd wrote that diary. It appeared years after his death, and it almost certainly is a hoax. However, the hoax might be covering up a boring but terrifying truth. Byrd didn't find Agartha, that's what they called the city inside of the hollow earth. He likely found a military fortification. If the Nazis or someone else had perfect disc-shaped aircraft, the Die Glock or the Bell technology, Antarctica was the perfect place to hide it. Byrd didn't retreat because he met a spiritual guru inside of the planet. He retreated because his 1946 propeller planes were getting swatted out of the sky by 1950s technology. There's only one document that really matters, and it isn't classified. It was printed in a Chilean newspaper. On his way back from the failure, Byrd stopped in Santiago and he gave an interview. This is a direct translation of his warning to the world. Quote, "The Admiral stated that he didn't want to frighten anyone unduly, but it was a bitter reality that in case of a new war, the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds." End quote. Pole to pole. Think about the physics of that. To fly from the South Pole to the North Pole, you have to fly over the Americas or Europe or the Pacific. He wasn't talking about Soviet bombers. In 1947, the Soviets barely had a functioning air force. He was talking about something that could traverse the entire planet at supersonic speeds with impunity. Now look at the timeline. March 1947, Byrd warns of supersonic polar craft. June 1947, Kenneth Arnold sees flying saucers over Mount Rainier. July 1947, something crashes in Roswell, New Mexico. September 1947, the National Security Act is passed, creating the CIA and the U.S. Air Force as a separate branch. Do you think that that's all just a coincidence? Do you even believe in coincidences? Probably not if you're listening to this podcast. The United States Navy goes to Antarctica, gets its nose bloodied by something that can fly impossibly fast, and 6 months later, the U.S. government completely reorganizes its entire military and intelligence structure to focus on global surveillance. Think about that. The CIA wasn't created to spy on the Soviets, not initially. The evidence suggests the CIA was created to figure out what the hell Admiral Byrd saw on the ice. This is why there are no documents, because this event was the big bang of secrecy. Before Highjump, the military was fairly open. After Highjump, the Iron Curtain of classification came down. Admiral Byrd was silenced. He was hospitalized. He was told to stop talking to reporters. And Operation Highjump was categorized as a, quote, testing mission, end quote, forever. But we have the newspaper clipping, and we have the crash report of George 1, and we have the fact that for a decade the U.S. government banned almost all travel to the interior of Antarctica after this incident. They locked the door and they threw away the key. Why would they do that if Admiral Byrd was suddenly crazy? You tell me. Admiral Byrd warned us about things orbiting pole to pole. Well, it turns out the CIA did find them. We have spent this episode talking about a time before the documents. Next time we are jumping forward to 1954 to a set of documents that are very real and very weird. We're going to investigate the Black Knight satellite. We will be looking at CIA document RDP 79 T00935A00040019001-3. This is a CIA report regarding the unidentified Earth satellite spotted by radar years before Sputnik was launched. We are going to look at the photos from the Space Shuttle Endeavour, or rather, I'm going to post a link for you to look at those photos, the Tesla radio signals from 1899, and the CIA's concern that an ancient alien probe had been in polar orbit watching us for 13,000 years. Admiral Byrd looked down and saw them. Next week we look up. Hit the subscribe button. You do not want to miss the Black Knight files. I'll see you in the archives.